So when we talk about the loop up the wall technique, this is a common technique that a lot of people use, and simply all you have is a loop that gets placed up the wall to allow the nozzle member to advance, whether down a hall, up a set of staircases, or down a staircase to the objective. And the thought process is that as he moves forward at his rate of speed, I, as the backup member, being at the base of the staircase, can simply put this loop back up the wall to give him the freedom of moving at his speed while allowing me the ability to move and gather more hose and bring it to the base of the steps so that we can move this line effectively and transition from the first floor to the second floor, or from the first floor to the basement in as fluid a motion as possible. It's relatively easy to do. It's not overly complicated. And in some cases, you might see this loop get placed or done as a round turn. When we talk about utilizing the round turn for the advance up the steps, one of the things that becomes problematic is the round turn can be great for trying to advance line as a backup or a corner member from one floor to another. However, the round turn as making the initial advance up the steps can be problematic, because what you see here is you have a nice big loop, but as our nozzle member advances up the steps, and I'm going to have you go ahead and do it, Evan, you can see that this line, in some cases it plays out great, and in other cases you might develop a nice kink right there that can reduce flow as he's trying to advance and knock down fire ahead of him. Typically we see that more with lower overall total engine discharge pressures. In this case, we have a combination nozzle on the end of 1 3/4 hose line. We're being pumped at about 150 psi. We don't have that issue here, but it is a possibility and a concern. So we need to be thinking diligently about managing our kinks, and anything that we can do to reduce the likelihood that we're going to develop a kink, particularly in the initial advance of going from one floor to another or transitioning between floors, we need to try to do that. So the last technique that I would talk about transitioning between floors, particularly up, is what I like to call the drag-a-loop method. This drag-a-loop method essentially requires two people to do, and as a backup member, my nozzle member is already making his ascent up the staircase. I'm just simply going to pull a loop of hose behind me and make sure that we create this round turn, and I'm going to drag it up the steps at least halfway, and then come back and get more hose. By dragging up that loop up the steps at least halfway, what that does for me is it allows me to assure that my nozzle member has enough hose in that established loop that he can get to the top of the steps and make the turn, buying him some time at the upper level and giving him the ability to knock down fire, and cool that environment ahead of our advance, protecting anybody else who might be operating on the second floor, as well as give me, as the backup member, the capability to come back and get more line in a low manpower situation. If we have the ability for both of us to be up on that floor we're transitioning to, great. If you might be riding one officer and 5 firefighters, you may have one officer and 2 firefighters. And I would say that in a low manpower scenario, anything that we can do to make this advance more effective and safer for the whole crew, as well as those who are operating in and around us, better off we are.